Just a week to go before President Clinton visits Ireland. Tonight we take a close look at the deadlocked peace process and ask just how serious the current crisis is. Also, we report on allegations of mistreatment of Republican prisoners in British jails. It's prime time after the news.
And following prime time, you can see the third programme in the series about true-life Irish murder cases. Thou Shalt Not Kill is at 10:10. But now at 9 o'clock, it's time for the main evening news with Brian Dobson.
Well, Taoiseach has further telephone contact with John Major over the peace impasse. Radovan Karadzic and the Bosnian leadership accept the Dayton peace agreement. The family of Josephine Dollard, missing for 2 weeks, make an emotional appeal for information. Hello again. The Taoiseach and the British Prime Minister have had their third telephone conversation in as many days in their continuing effort to break the deadlock in the Northern Ireland peace process. They're expected to speak by telephone again tomorrow, but tonight there is no indication that a compromise on the issue of decommissioning IRA arms can be agreed. Official sources say that while intensive contacts are continuing, no one is underestimating the difficulties in the way of progress.
Paramilitary arms, the problem which has blocked progress in the peace process for many months, lies at the heart of the current round of intense contacts between Dublin and London. Britain is still firmly insisting that some IRA weapons must be handed up before Sinn Féin can take part in all-party talks. The government wants the arms issue placed within the remit of the proposed international agency and is trying to persuade the British to agree to approach the agency's eventual report on decommissioning with an open mind. But given Sir Patrick Mayhew's firm restatement of his government's position yesterday, the Fianna Fáil leader Bertie Ahern was extremely pessimistic when he spoke in the Dáil this morning.
Would the Taoiseach agree that the blinkered approach shown once again yesterday by the Secretary of State is delaying and stalling the entire peace process? And would the Taoiseach also agree that a glorious opportunity to consolidate the peace process has now been lost and an opportunity to move it forward has been lost? And could I ask the Taoiseach if the Taoiseach has informed President Clinton of that view?
For his part, the Taoiseach, Mr Spring, aware of the nature of the continuing efforts to reach a compromise, attempted to inject a note of optimism.
I think it's very clear and very obvious that we want to make progress. We are attempting to do that, and we're devoting all our energies to that at the present time. And we shall continue to do so, because I think it is very important that we resolve the impasse, that we avail of the window of opportunity that exists at the present time, and that we have a political underpinning for the peace process, which we all obviously want to continue. And we are continuing to do that, Ceann Comhairle, and at this very time, I would be optimistic that we can make the breakthrough.
As far as we're concerned, the Secretary of State is holding up the entire peace process and has been entirely unhelpful to the Irish government and to the Irish people and to the whole process. And it's about time that he moved away from a position that's totally intransigent.
Even as those exchanges were taking place, the Taoiseach and John Major were discussing the impasse in their third telephone contact within as many days. This one lasted 45 minutes, and the two men are expected to talk again tomorrow. But all the indications are that little progress has been made on the arms issue. Contacts between the two governments are continuing, but the prospects of a summit in advance of President Clinton's visit next week look even bleaker this evening.
Bosnian Serb leaders have reluctantly accepted the American-brokered peace deal on the former Yugoslavia, signed in Ohio earlier this week. A delegation met the Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic for talks near Belgrade today, and afterwards formally endorsed the terms of the Dayton Agreement. The announcement is expected to boost President Clinton's chances of winning congressional support for the deployment of US troops in Bosnia.
As America celebrates Thanksgiving Day, President Clinton is attempting to whet the public's appetite for his Bosnian peace agreement. 20,000 US troops will be needed to police the deal. The White House is making it clear that they could run into trouble.
You can never say there won't be casualties. You can never say that this will be a situation in which US forces will not encounter hostility.
Some diplomats have been worried over the past few days by hawkish statements coming from the self-styled Bosnian Serb capital of Pale. While some leaders there have described the peace agreement as a betrayal and hinted at a return to violence, the US is having none of it.
We've heard the threats from Pale, and we've seen the dissatisfaction from some of the Bosnian Serb leaders. And the fact is they've got to understand that the time for peace has come and that the war is over.
The Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic is widely viewed as the key player. The decision last night by the Security Council to lift economic sanctions has significantly bolstered his position. Today he took on the Bosnian Serb leadership, including its self-appointed president Radovan Karadzic. At a secret meeting in Belgrade, the man accused of genocide was forced to sign up. If the deal, which was initialed at Dayton, is to have any chance of surviving, the momentum for peace needs to keep building. The Bosnian government wants immediate implementation.
We have the peace on the paper, but those are not self-implementing agreements. We must always remember that. So the sooner the better.
While another piece of the jigsaw has now fallen into place, it remains to be seen whether this latest Balkan peace deal manages to last any longer than its predecessors.
Here, the family of Josephine Dollard, the Kilkenny woman missing for 2 weeks, have said they believe she's still alive and have pleaded for anyone with information about her to come forward. Josephine, who's 21, was last seen making a telephone call in the Kildare village of Moon at around 11:45 on the night she disappeared.
Here in the village of Moon in County Kildare 2 weeks ago tonight, Josephine Dollard from this phone box last made contact with a friend. This afternoon, her distraught family, 3 sisters and a brother, gathered in Kilkenny to make this appeal.
We are very concerned about Jojo, and we appeal to the persons who is holding Jojo. We beg of you, please let her go. You have broken all our hearts. Please let us know where she is. Give us a little, just give us a little clue. What?
Do you believe that Jojo is alive at this stage?
I do. We really do believe that Jojo is out there. We have to, we have to get her back. Ooh.
What would you say to the public tonight watching this? Anyone with any information?
Anybody with information, it doesn't matter how small it is, they might think it has no connection. Please let the Gardaí know.
2 weeks after the disappearance of Josephine Dollard, the Garda investigation into her whereabouts continues to draw a blank. While intensive land searches will continue over the coming days, as of now, there are no new developments, no new leads.
The Vatican has reaffirmed in the strongest possible way that women may not be ordained as priests in the Roman Catholic Church. Its top doctrinal body, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, has said the Pope's ruling on the matter last year is part of the depositive faith of the Church. The congregation says the ruling must be held always, everywhere, by all the faithful.
The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith was asked to clarify queries surrounding the Pope's declaration last year that the Church has no authority whatsoever to ordain women as priests. And the congregation ruled that the Pope's word on the matter is indeed final. It gives 3 reasons for its decision. Ordaining men alone is founded in the written word of God. It's been constantly preserved and applied in church tradition since the very beginning. It's been proposed infallibly by the teaching authority of the Church. Therefore, it belongs to the depositive faith. Soline Vatinel has been campaigning to have women ordained as part of the organisation BASIC, Brothers and Sisters in Christ. She first noticed her vocation to the priesthood 20 years ago and is now shocked at this latest male-only ruling.
Nearly 20 years ago, the Biblical Pontifical Commission reported that there was nothing in Scripture against the ordination of women. Obviously, that has been ignored because the findings were not favourable to the status quo, and now there's an affirmation that the written word of God says that women must be excluded. Where does that come from? The exegetes, the scripture scholars, will not find anywhere in the scripture such a comment from the Lord.
Do you feel this is closing the door finally on your cause?
Well, you know, it's when all human hopes go that, I suppose, God starts intervening. I think it's actually a measure of the extent to which the Pope's letter has been rejected by the faithful, and I mean the faithful. And it's just a measure that the teaching doesn't resonate in people's hearts. People put it into their conscience and say, no, we do not believe that is what Christ wants of us. And I remember Cardinal Daly saying on the Late Late Show only a few weeks ago, saying to us, you are the church. If you don't like it, change it. But when this document comes out, who is the church? Are we the church?
Prosecutions against more than 40 Dublin householders for failure to pay water charges have been thrown out by the District Court. The surprise decision has been welcomed by anti-charges campaigners as a major boost to their nationwide campaign. However, South Dublin County Council, which took the cases, says they were dismissed on a technicality, which it intends to rectify.
With an estimated £15 million in unpaid water charges owed to local authorities around the country, this was billed as a landmark case. Several hundred protesters has already gathered outside Rathfarnham District Court as the President of the District Court, District Judge Peter Smithick, arrived to deliver his verdict on the case put to him earlier this month. The hearing lasted just over half an hour. Legal argument centred on whether or not South Dublin County Council had proved that householders named in the prosecutions were the occupiers of the houses listed. Counsel for Dublin Anti-Water Charges campaign, Paul O'Higgins SC, contended that the council had not.
The crucial evidence came from a County Council Water Department official. He said that no checks had been carried out to show that those named in the prosecutions were in fact the occupiers of the houses. And that was the beginning of the end for the council's case.
In a dramatic decision, Judge Smithick said he had decided to dismiss the prosecutions. South Dublin County Council said later that they would not be deterred from pursuing defaulters, but outside jubilation as the anti-water charges campaigners pledged to fight on.
This campaign will continue now with renewed vigour until the political parties in the government realise that they must abolish it. Our people are not prepared to accept unjust taxes such as this, especially in view of the fact that a small minority at the top of society escape with tax amnesties and with very little taxation on a regular basis.
A total of some 44 prosecutions by South Dublin County Council were dismissed today, but others are being brought and are now due to be heard in the new year.
2 more members of the board of CIE have resigned, bringing to 4 the total number who've stepped down since the government issued its ultimatum. Colin Brennan and Tony Rooney submitted their resignations this morning. Last week, the government asked the entire board, with the exception of the worker directors, to resign by Monday. Now, still to come in tonight's 9 o'clock news, publicans criticise proposals which would prevent them refusing service to customers. And we hear how Ballybunion has reacted to President Clinton's non-appearance on the first tee. Join us in a few minutes.
This week, get a £5 voucher free from Don Stores. For every £30 you spend in one transaction in our family fashion, footwear, household textiles and toys departments, you'll receive a £5 voucher free. Present this voucher next week in these departments and save £5 only at Don Stores.
Everybody knows that milk's for babies, so charming, disarming, whatever they do. Everybody knows that milk's for babies, and wouldn't you know it, baby, milk's for you. Soft baby skin, strong baby bones, bright baby smile, and ooh, great muscle tone. Wouldn't you know it, baby, milk's for you. It's a health kick, baby.
Play Lotto. This Saturday, the jackpot is over £500,000.
It could be you.
See, you don't do this with your mates, but when you're with your girlfriend, you think, it might be a nice thing to take her to the bally. So I thought I'd get a couple of tickets and go. I mean, I have stayed in rough bars in Leicester and in Belfast, and I have never met people who were more rude and more inconsiderate than an audience. See, in Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, they didn't even want a pint. I just want a drink. I'm standing, excuse me, a pint of her, and there's no chance. It was unbelievable.
Reasons to eat album. 1, 2, 3.
Lots of oats and wheat, heavenly to eat, makes every day a treat. No added sugar taste, try it any place, suits my kind of pace. The recipe is Swiss, eating it is bliss, it's healthier than this. New nutty crunch, loads of nuts to munch, sees you through to lunchtime. California raisins, perfect when you're lazy, makes you feel amazing. Race, reasons to eat Alpen. 1, 2, 3.
Well, after the weeks of campaigning, the final preparations were being made today for tomorrow's divorce referendum. More than 2 million people are entitled to vote. The polling stations will open at 9 o'clock in the morning.
The country last voted in a referendum in 1992 when 3 votes on abortion coincided with an election. This time it's a little more straightforward. There's just one ballot paper, it's white, and it's a case of X marks the spot. If you approve of the proposed amendment, mark X in the yes box. If you do not approve, mark X in the no box. The full wording of the 15th Amendment is printed on polling cards, but if you have not received one in the post, don't worry.
A polling card isn't essential in order to vote. The only essential condition is that your name must be on the register. So that if you wish to check with your local authority, you can phone them and ask them to check that you are in fact on the register. Or if it's convenient for you, call into your local Garda station or library or post office and ask to see the current register of electors, which is printed on white paper.
It's important to bring identification with you when going to vote. Acceptable documents include a passport, a driving licence, a work ID card, a social welfare book or bank cards. The polling stations open at 9 in the morning and close at 10 tomorrow night. That's an hour later than normal. 2.6 million people are entitled to vote in tomorrow's referendum. It's an example of democracy in action. But the only way to ensure your voice is heard is to use your vote.
The Small and Medium Enterprise Association, ISME, has called on the Minister for Finance to cap public sector pay at this year's level. In a pre-budget submission, the association says the money saved could be used to reduce taxes and encourage growth in the private sector.
It's that time of year again. No, not just Christmas time, but believe it or not, for some people, time to start thinking ahead to the 1996 budget. Over the next few weeks, charity organisations, farmers and business groups will be putting forward their submissions and suggestions in order to get what they can from Rory Quinn on Budget Day. One of the first groups to throw their hat in the ring is the Small and Medium Enterprise Association. They represent companies like General Controls and Automation in Dunleary. 20 people are employed here, designing, among other things, industrial robots and vision inspection systems for quality control. Managing Director Michael Roberts says small enterprise should be rewarded in the same way as multinationals, including similar tax breaks which would lead to more jobs.
It would be very useful to us if we could have a tax holiday for the first few years that we were in business. It would allow us to gather in reserves of cash. It would have allowed us to train our people in and to pay them higher salaries so that they weren't as tempting, if you like, to the multinationals who tend to come in on a tax holiday and then a lower tax structure.
Launching its pre-budget submission, the Enterprise Association is calling on the Minister to remember the entrepreneurs who they say are taking risks and providing jobs.
We're asking him to get the budget, the debts down in line with the Maastricht Agreement and at the same time to encourage enterprise to take on more people. The only way that can be done is by a reduction on the tax on labour and also to introduce incentives for people to take more risk and to hire more people.
A Dáil committee has demanded that the Taoiseach Dick Spring give a full account of his use of the government jet and other Defence Force aircraft. In particular, it wants to know who's travelled with him and why. Mr. Spring made almost 100 domestic flights during 1993 and 1994. Today he said he'd be happy to answer any questions on the matter in full in the Dáil.
The Public Accounts Committee asked for a list of passengers who were on internal flights operated by the Air Corps at the Taoiseach's request. During 1993 and 94, Mr. Spring made 99 flights within Ireland on Dauphin helicopters, Alouette aircraft and on the government Gulfstream jet. 18 more than the Taoiseach, 16 more than the Minister for Defence and the Marine. But on more than 40 occasions, passengers travelled with the Taoiseach, and Fianna Fáil want to know who they were and why they were with them.
We looked at the number of travel arrangements within the country through the various ministries. Questions were posed by members of the committee, and we feel we're entitled to get the information from the relevant departments. That hasn't come.
Today, the Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs said that information was not available to him, but available from the Department of Defence. However, he said the Taoiseach indicated he would welcome the opportunity to answer in full in the Dáil any questions on his use of Air Corps aircraft. Fine Gael, however, believes Fianna Fáil are only making mischief.
86 trips were done by the Minister for Marine and Defence during that period, that they have accused the Taoiseach of using the helicopters excessively. And in that situation, if they want it that way, I believe it should apply to all ministers during that period of time, and it should be a thorough investigation.
The Department of Foreign Affairs also spent £150,000 last year on the World Cup. That included paying the expenses of Irish fans stranded in Florida after their tour company collapsed. 30 of those fans have now repaid the department £5,000 each. The remaining 11 are continuing to do so in instalments.
Well, still on soccer, it's been confirmed that RTÉ Television will broadcast the European Championship playoff between the Republic of Ireland and Holland live from Anfield on the 13th of December. The associations which represent the owners of public houses have objected strongly to proposed legislation which would remove their right to refuse service without a reason. They're opposing a section of the new equal status legislation because they say it takes away their right to manage their businesses and it puts them in an unfair situation.
The new legislation will deal with discrimination on the grounds of gender, marital status, sexual orientation, disability and membership of the travelling community. Today, Dr. Rory O'Hanlon said Fianna Fáil would oppose the section of the legislation which would remove the right of publicans to refuse service without a reason. And Frank Fell of the Licensed Vintners Association said publicans would no longer be able to exercise discretion in the interest of safety and comfort for other customers.
The main cause of the problem are people who would come on premises who would be drunk and disorderly, who would be drug takers, who could be thieves, people like that, that not alone the staff of the house wouldn't want to have there, but also indeed the general public who would frequent the premises.
The Department of Equality and Law Reform says it's committed to publishing the new legislation early next year on the grounds that people should be judged on their merits as individuals and not, they say, by reference to irrelevant characteristics. But the department stresses that it is not the intention to take away the right to manage from people running pubs, hotels, restaurants and any other public facilities.
Our biggest fear is that this legislation will give the impression to the public that they can carte blanche go into any pub they want to, order a drink and be ensured that they will get service. And that if they don't get service, that they will then have the right to go to an equality officer and take their case there, where the publican will have to stand up and defend himself at obviously great cost and inconvenience. And we are concerned that this will open the floodgates for such type claims.
Our problem in the main in this issue is the settled community, is the ordinary people who frequent pubs and who lived in a settled environment. The minority groupings that are mentioned in it are not really the main cause of the problem.
The Princess of Wales has arrived in Buenos Aires for a 4-day visit to Argentina. It's not an official visit, but the Princess will have formal talks with President Menem. From the airport, she was flown by helicopter into the city, where she was greeted by the mayor. There's considerable media interest in the visit, especially since last Monday's Panorama interview. It marks a significant improvement in relations between Britain and Argentina during the past year. Finally, they can be forgiven for feeling a bit under par in Ballybunion tonight after President Clinton cancelled plans for a game of golf in the resort when he comes here next week. The town had been teed up for a presidential visit. In the event, what should have been a birdie for Ballybunion has turned out to be something of a bogey.
The buzz and hype had just started in town when the bad news came through last night. Local hoteliers, shopkeepers and traders had intended dressing up their premises for the occasion. Already US Foreign Affairs officials had arrived in town with the local development company about to put the finishing touches to their preparations.
We were certainly going to dress up the town, all the American flags, the buntings, jazz bands, Irish music. We had cartoonists, Scott, and we were going to do some Bill Clinton cartoons, swinging golf clubs, things like that.
But it was Ballybunion Golf Club that stood to gain most from the visit. Ranked 12th in the world by the prestigious Golf magazine, it has 1,500 base members, as well as 30,000 golfers paying £35 a head in green fees in 1995 alone.
Yes, we're extremely disappointed that he has been forced to cancel his trip to Ballybunnan. Was to arrive about 8 o'clock, tee off at 8:30 on the old course. And he had also intimated that he would like to play the Cashin course. Hopefully that he might see his way to come at another time. He'll be most welcome, and we'll be indeed honoured and privileged that the President of the United States would come and play our course.
Naturally, there was disappointment amongst the townsfolk as well.
Everybody was really looking forward to it, and it would have been great excitement in the place. So I feel that while they're disappointed, they're also hoping that he might come again.
It's a major disappointment to the people of Ballybunnan because there was great expectation here and a great buzz about the town.
All the hotels and everything were booked up, so we were expecting an awful crowd in the town staying, and we'd be going out around the town and that. The whole town is devastated over it.
But I was in the States myself the other day, the weekend, and everybody over there couldn't visualise him coming to Ballybunnan at all, or going anywhere for that matter, you know.
Tonight's main news again, the Taoiseach and the British Prime Minister have had their third telephone conversation in as many days in their continuing effort to break the deadlock in the peace process. That's the news tonight. We'll see you tomorrow at 9. Until then, from all of us, a very good night to you.
Hello there. Well, it was very mild today, and indeed it'll be very mild again tomorrow. Temperatures will take a dip during Saturday, but they will recover during the early days of the coming week. Today we have this area of low pressure here in the Atlantic generating a strong but very, very mild southerly breeze over us. This particular front now is crossing the country at the moment. It is bringing some outbreaks of rain, but it will clear away overnight. The low itself will be coming in tomorrow. It will bring in slacker winds, but also a good number of showers, and these showers will emerge later to give some longer periods of rain, particularly in the west and north of the country. Indeed, there's still a good lot of cloud over us, and it is giving some outbreaks of rain, giving the odd heavy burst of rain in places, but most of the rain is fairly light. It has dried up now in the west and north of the country, and that clearer weather will extend to all areas as the night progresses. It's still fairly windy. Those southerly winds are still touching gale force in some coastal areas, but as the clearer weather becomes established, the winds will be decreasing and swinging around to a more southwesterly direction, though the winds will stay fairly strong for a good part of the night here in the Irish Sea. It'll be a fairly mild night, temperatures not falling below about 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow will start generally dry and bright. There will be some sunshine for a while, but there'll be showers here from the word go in the western areas, and the showers will become more widespread during the afternoon and evening, and they will emerge to give some longer periods of rain, particularly in the evening time here in the west and north of the country. Temperatures tomorrow are still pretty good, up to about 12-13 degrees Celsius, and winds tomorrow will be much slacker. They'll be from a south or southwesterly direction. Tomorrow night will again bring some showery outbreaks of rain. And you notice that at that stage the winds will now have gone around to a northerly direction here over western parts, and that will tend to drag the temperatures down. So there is a danger that some of the showers could be turning wintry at that stage. And then during Saturday the northerly wind will become established countrywide, so there will be a noticeable drop in temperatures. There'll be bright periods, but a good number of showers as well. Again, some of those showers wintry. And that's it. A very good night to you.
Friday on RTE1. At 8:25, we're keeping up appearances.
I wish you'd smile more when you're gardening, Richard.
If I do that, they're going to lock me away.
Our movie is the star-studded Bond spoof, Casino Royale.
My nephew, the head of Smash? You mean that I have been bombed, bullied, and baited out of retirement to deal with you?
Comedy highlights for Friday on RTE1.
These are words your elderly relative or neighbor may not have heard in a long time, unless you say them. Keep in touch with the elderly.
Michael Bolton Greatest Hits. 12 all-time classics. 5 brand new songs. The ultimate album.
Kellogg's Fruit and Fiber's delicious combination of fruit, nuts and flakes means you never know what's going to come next. For instance, 1 minute it's... and the next it might be... See what I mean? Absolutely delicious.
Kellogg's Fruit and Fiber. Every mouthful is a new experience.
Bass Outlaw, a famous Texian whose unfortunate surname didn't deter him from becoming a Texas Ranger. He disappeared after he was killed in a gunfight in El Paso, only to reappear on a pack of Texicanos. Texicanos, infamous corn chips. It's time you tasted them.
At Power City, every video is on sale. We've a price breakthrough on this latest Video Plus model at an incredible £179. With easy-to-use Video Plus programming, it has long play, remote control and auto head cleaning. Now at Power City.
And all because the lady loves Cadbury's milk tray.
Buy any Whopper value meal at Burger King and collect Burger King Beats Volume 2 for only $2.99, including Rolls-Royce, Odyssey, War, and the Pointer Sisters. Burger King, home of the Whopper.
You plan to save for the future. You plan to save for a place to live. You plan to save for the most important years of his life. Shouldn't your plans include the people you can be certain of?
AIB Bank. Let our strength be your security.
While you're waiting for your Guinness to settle,
Prime time analysis of some of the day's main stories now as we join Miriam O'Callaghan and Michael Macmillan.
Good evening. This day week, President Bill Clinton will arrive in Belfast to begin his two-day tour of Ireland, North and South. It was hoped that the intense diplomatic activity in the run-up to the visit might have led to a breakthrough in the seemingly hopelessly deadlocked peace process. But that now looks very unlikely. Tonight we examine in detail the current problems, assess how likely they are to be resolved, and later look in particular at the highly sensitive issue of prisoners.
But first, here in Belfast, President Clinton will switch on the Christmas lights at the City Hall this time next week. There's no doubt that the cosmetics are right, but politically the parties and governments haven't given him much to go on. The phone line between John Major and John Bruton has been hot, but nothing has been agreed on a way forward, and an expected summit for tomorrow is now off. In the absence of consensus between London and Dublin, many believe that a huge opportunity to influence international opinion will be missed. As Belfast and the North in general prepares for the first ever visit of an American president next week, the deadlock between Dublin and London on the terms of a revived Anglo-Irish summit apparently rose and fell again in the space of a few crucial days' negotiation. The British Prime Minister John Major was pushing for a summit tomorrow. John Bruton didn't rule it out. But then the Northern Secretary, Sir Patrick Mayhew, seems to have scuppered things after making these remarks.
The arms are a baleful reminder of the past and a formidable impediment still to the negotiations we are all aiming for to settle the future.
Within hours, the Taoiseach responded with a clear criticism of the British approach, and the summit was off.
The twin-track process was evolved by John Major and I at Cannes, specifically to find a way around this British insistence on a gesture of decommissioning before talks could start. Now, to my mind, it is very important that the twin track, if it's to start, deals with that issue. It can't be excluded from it. And if it is excluded from it, then the twin track is a waste of time. If we're to move forward, we must be willing to recognise the need for compromise, and you cannot lay down the sort of immutable position that I felt Sir Patrick was laying down today and expect that there's going to be a compromise.
But to add to the confusion, the Taoiseach, appearing on the BBC today, was taken by surprise by reports that the meeting was definitely cancelled.
Well, that's news on me. I was just talking to the Taoiseach within the last hour. He had a conversation with the Prime Minister this morning. My understanding is they'll be having further conversations probably tomorrow morning again.
In the Dáil today came one of the hardest-hitting ever criticisms of the British government from the Fianna Fáil leader, Bertie Ahern.
As far as we're concerned, the Secretary of State is holding up the entire peace process and has been entirely unhelpful to the Irish government and to the Irish people and to the whole process. And it's about time that he moved away from a position that's totally intransigent.
It is the stockpile of weapons in the IRA's arsenal which continues to be the stumbling block to progress. And as time goes on, the threat of these sorts of weapons being used again increases substantially. While Sinn Féin has consistently warned from the outset that the peace is in danger, security sources in the north are now taking the Republican leadership's comments very seriously.
And I think that the British have completely undermined the core of the peace process. You've heard me say this before. By refusing to honour the commitments which they made before the IRA cessation. And I think the issues at the heart of that still need to be resolved. We need to have both governments moving to all-party talks without preconditions as soon as possible.
I think there's a basic misunderstanding here between the two governments. Dublin sees the twin-track process as a way of overcoming the hurdle of disarming prior to talks. London sees it in an entirely different light. They see it as beginning the process of disarming. Now, there is no indication at all from Sinn Féin or the IRA that they will do that, and they constantly refer back to the ceasefire declaration of August 31st of last year, that this was a cessation of military operations. There was no provision for any handover of weapons, and I don't think that hurdle will be overcome. Now, the problem for John Major